Welcome back to the sound of your life, more specifically the OFM Business Hour with me, Olebogeng Motsi. Now, if you recall, as of 1 July, both the Promotion of Access to Information Act, known as PAIA, and the Protection of Personal Information Act, known as POPI for short, now fall under the jurisdiction of the information regulator. In August 2021, a month after this happened, new regulations pertaining to PAIA were green-lit. And tonight I speak to Ira Gunning from ENS Africa's Banking and Finance Department to delve into what those regulations say and how they affect your business. Ira, let's get into that recent announcement by Ronald Lamola. Can you provide us with a brief overview of the latest regulations pertaining to PAIA?
Yes, absolutely. So these regulations were passed, I think, on the 27th of August. So of importance and relevance here is that a guide is going to be published by the information regulator, and that guide is going to set out an easy way to understand PAIA, so PAIA in layman's terms. And that guide is going to be made available in various official languages. And information officers of companies, and each company must have an information officer, and that is by default your CEO unless you appoint somebody else, must make a copy of this guide available in at least 2 official languages at their registered head office. The PAIA regulations also publish new forms if you want to access records, so prescribed forms to be used, and it also says the information officer must assist a person who requests access to records under PAIA with such requests, and for example, if they're illiterate, they must be assisted to complete the forms.
Let's get into the role of the information officer. You said it's usually the head of an institution or an organization. Is that head able to delegate some of his roles to others? Because these individuals tend to be very busy, and I don't know if they would always be able to assist with, something like requesting access to a record by an employee.
They could authorize somebody else to become the information officer. The information regulator and a guidance must be at least executive level within the body. But of course, guidance provided by the regulator tells us what the regulator's views are on the legislation. It wouldn't affect the legislation itself. And they can also appoint deputy information officers. Now, very often we advise our clients to appoint what we call data champions. So they would, for example, appoint a deputy information officer for IT and for marketing and for HR. And those are the data champions that will help them roll out PAIA and PAIA compliance.
We understand that the request fee has also increased. Can we elaborate on some of those increases?
Yes, absolutely. The request fee is now 140 Rand, and new fees have been published to access your information. For example, if you want photocopies in A4 size, it is now 2 Rand per page. A part thereof, printed copies, 2 Rand per page. If you want a flash drive to be provided, of course, by the requester, you would pay 40 Rand, and so on. So the fees are set out on the regs.
And this is fees for access to any and all information?
Absolutely. Access to records of information. There are some grounds for refusal prescribed in terms of PAIA, where a company can refuse access to information, for example, if information is confidential or contains business secrets and so on.
What are some of the penalties that companies can, what are some of the fines that they can be fined should they perhaps be contravening PAIA?
Well, quite interestingly enough, if your information officer does not make that PAIA manual available, so there's the PAIA guide, which is going to be issued by the regulator, and then information officers must also have a PAIA manual available on their website. And if they fail in a willfully or grossly negligent manner to comply with these provisions that say you must have a PAIA manual, they can get a fine or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 2 years. And an information officer who willfully or in a grossly negligent manner charges a fee other than the prescribed fee can also get a fine or imprisonment not exceeding 2 years. And then in general, in terms of PAIA, if you don't comply with the Act, you can get an enforcement notice. and non-compliance with that enforcement notice or other offences in terms of the Act, for example, trying to obstruct the regulator, can also lead to fines of up to 10 million rand or 10 years in jail.
Era, any closing remarks on these latest regulations and where people can access more information pertaining to said regulations?
Well, on the Information Regulator's website, you'll find all the information that you need on the regulator's website. So you can just Google Information Regulator. And then, of course, the information officers must make sure that they do get this PAIA manual on their website, make the PAIA guide available at their head office in at least 2 languages.
And that was Era Gunning from ENS Africa's Banking and Finance Department speaking on these latest PAIA regulations that were greenlit around 27 of August, she said. Now, according to those regulations, there's a new PAIA guide which needs to be published by the information regulator. Said guide must then be availed by your information officer, the head of an institution, at varied businesses or the headquarters of those institutions. There are some interesting penalties that are associated with grossly not availing that manual on a institution's website, etc. So if you want to re-listen to this important conversation with Era Gunning, you can catch it on ofm.co.za. Just remember to click on read and then on business.